Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Today we're doing a list, and it's an important one. Video games are a hugely diverse medium and there's a vast array of games out there waiting to be played, but time is the greatest thief of enjoyment and you unfortunately can't play everything. So I decided to make a list of 10 games that everybody needs to play at least once. This isn't a list of the top 10 games of all time or anything. In fact, my favourite game of all time isn't even here. These are just experiences that I think every single gamer owes to themselves to try. So if there is any game on this list that you haven't played or haven't heard of, then you need to add it to your backlog and get it played at some point, because these are, in my opinion, essential gaming experiences. So, in no real particular order, let's get started. We're going to kick things off with Inscryption, and I played Inscryption last year after hearing a bunch of people say how creative the game was and how it surprised them. I went into this knowing that it was more than just a card game. I knew there was a twist, I just didn't know what it was. But even if it was just a card game, I would have been satisfied. The initial game is so well designed that it's immensely fun to play. Trying to tip the scales in your favour requires strategic thinking and adaptive decision making to suit the situation that you're in. The creepy nature of the setting and your opponent being shrouded in darkness gives you a lot of questions, and these only escalate once things starting to get a bit weirder. Of course, the game is more than a card game, but I don't want to spoil any of that stuff here just in case you haven't played it. So if you haven't yet given Inscryption a chance, I heavily advise you to do so for a glimpse into some of the best creativity that this industry has to offer. Now, Spiritfarer actually is one of my top 10 games of all time, and that's because it's the most transformative experience that I have ever had in gaming. It's the only game that managed to alter how I think about certain things, and that's always a sign of elite media. You play as the Spiritfarer, sailing the seas of purgatory, helping lost souls pass into the next place. The gameplay could very loosely be described as Stardew Valley on a boat, but that would absolutely do it a disservice. You meet lost souls across the islands and invite them onto your ship. You'll then need to complete a series of tasks for them, explore the islands, build stuff, and as you grow closer and develop a bond with them, the gameplay involves each character teaching you something new, a new mechanic or something along those lines, and then once their arc is complete, they'll tell you that they're ready to go. You'll then witness an emotional scene and return to the boat. Each soul's house that they were staying in on your ship cannot be removed from your boat once they're gone, with the memories of them and what they taught you always being present as you progress the game. It's an essential gaming experience, there's no other way to describe it, and quite simply one of the most profound games ever made. Going for a completely different vibe, we now have Sekiro. Sekiro is by far my favourite Souls-like. The setting is enriched in so much culture that it's just awe-inspiring to explore it all. I did make a Sekiro video a long time ago called Sekiro, The Art of the Little Victory, and whilst I wouldn't recommend going back and watching that because I was very bad at making videos then, the point is true. With Sekiro, you are constantly getting better at the game. Each time you learn something or memorise an attack window, you feel a sense of satisfaction, and you continue to earn these small victories until you realise that your skill has grown exponentially. Unlike Dark Souls, it's almost impossible to defeat a Sekiro boss without mastering it. I've played Dark Souls and I've cheesed bosses at my first attempt. You can't do that in this game, you will not get by on luck alone. You have to learn attack patterns and counters, and each boss teaches you a valuable lesson. It's such a perfectly paced game, it's one of my favourite gaming experiences, and one that everybody needs to try. If you were gonna pick a Souls game, this is the one that I would pick. I feel like there's gotta be a Final Fantasy in here somewhere, and whilst most people would probably have chosen 7, I'm a Final Fantasy X guy through and through, as good as 7 is. Not only is the story deeply personal and tragic, with brilliant characters accompanying you on their journey, but it's also got my favourite combat in the series. The substitute system just works so well and it flows nicely. Most of the bosses are brilliantly designed, and of course there's the skill grid, the sphere thing, forgot what it's called, a vast upgrade system that allows you the creative freedom to set up your party the best way you see fit. It is an absolute titan of the genre, and playing through this game for the very first time is something that I would absolutely love to be able to do again, and envy any of you that get to do that now. If I was ever going to recommend a platformer, I'd have to go with Celeste. Not only is it a tight, brilliantly crafted gauntlet of stages, it's also got a heartfelt story with a message that probably needs to be heard by as many people as possible. Celeste focuses on how mental health can impact one's perception of themselves, delving deeper into societal pressure and self-doubt. Madeline needs to climb the mountain to prove that she can, whilst being chased by the embodiment of her doubt along the way. Not only is the story deeply profound with brilliant characters and a gorgeous art style, but the platforming is also absolutely top quality. It's challenging without becoming frustrating. The respawn points are at the beginning of every single stage. Each stage, if you did it perfectly, would take between 5 and 30 seconds to complete, so you never lose much time if you die, and you probably will die quite a lot, but it's still great. It's my favourite 2D platformer. I've played a lot of them, I've played a lot of good ones, this is my favourite, and anybody watching this video needs to play Celeste. Okay, now this is a strange one to have in a video like this, but I'm doubling down. This game, Danganronpa 2, is a sequel. And it's not one of those sequels where it's like, oh yeah, you can jump in with this game. I say you absolutely do need to play Danganronpa 1 in order to fully appreciate this game. So that makes it difficult to have in a list like this. But at the same time, I can't not put it in, because Danganronpa 2 is one of the most insane gaming experiences that I have ever had. And I just feel like I want everybody else to experience it too. If you're unaware of the premise of Danganronpa, a bunch of students are trapped and told that the only way to escape is to murder a fellow classmate and get away with it. If you're caught, you die. If you succeed, everyone else dies. But let me tell you now, nobody does plot twists like Danganronpa 2. The places this game takes you emotionally is just ridiculous. The first game is also great, but Danganronpa 2 is essentially the perfect sequel in every way. It's somehow got even better characters, it's definitely got a much more exciting setting, it's got a much more fleshed out protagonist. I would say that everybody needs to play Danganronpa 2 at some point, but again, difficult because you also need to play the first game as well. I could very easily have had either Replicant or Automata on this list, but I've chosen the controversial route, and I've picked Replicant. NieR Replicant is a stellar example of creativity through storytelling in video games, and the game is ambitious in its writing techniques. The game focuses heavily on how differing perspectives can influence how a story is told. The game has multiple endings that are needed in order to fully finish the game, similarly to Automata, and each time around the story expands exponentially. Your first time playing NieR Replicant is just something that is absolutely brilliant. I actually platinumed this game, it took like 70 hours, it was very grindy. I don't recommend doing the platinum, I absolutely recommend playing the game. It is just completely special, and you will never replicate the feeling of it ever again. You might think it's strange that I put a walking simulator on this list, and that might have annoyed you, but that just means that you've not played What Remains of Edith Finch. The story follows you, Edith Finch, exploring your ancestors' house and learning about how each of your relatives died in gruesome fashion. You're transported into the perspective of each ancestor in first person as you relive all of their horrible deaths. It's brilliant. You very quickly recognise the formula, and that just fills you with uneasiness as you know that each step you take, each puzzle you solve, is bringing you closer to the death. The game also features one of my favourite levels in video game history, which is executed perfectly. If you've played the game, you know what I mean here. I will be making a full video on this game at some stage, probably this year, but for now, even if you don't like walking simulators, I'd recommend at least trying this one. You can beat it in one sitting, it's 2 to 3 hours long, there's not really any excuse. Now for another game that is one of my actual favourite games of all time and is definitely in my top 10. The Yakuza series is confusing. There's a lot of games, it can be intimidating, but what you need to do is start with 0. It's not the first game in release order, it's the first game chronologically, and I do feel like it's the best place to start because not only does it flesh out all of the characters in Yakuza 1, it's also the best game in the series. It's stupid. The story is utterly incredible, like it's genuinely disgusting how phenomenal almost every single character in this game is. As it is a prequel to the first 5 Yakuza games, they had ironed out the kinks the series had and produced a perfect Yakuza experience. The side stories are brilliant, there's plenty of mini-games to do. If you wanted to play the game and just ignore the story, you could simply treat this game as a Tokyo simulator and still have a lot of fun. The Yakuza series is one of my favourites. I've played all the games, and none have ever managed to top how I felt when I played Yakuza 0 for the first time. The Resident Evil series is brilliant, and there's a lot of great games in it, but I'm gonna have to go with the best one, and that's the 4 remake. Look, the original game is still brilliant today, so that'll do. If you want to play the original Resident Evil 4, I think everyone should probably play that too. But I'm putting Remake in the list because it's just the better game. The game manages to find the perfect balance between action and horror. I personally don't think the game is that scary, but they still nail the atmosphere, and the core gameplay loop is magnificent. I think from a purely objective standpoint, the Resident Evil 4 Remake is one of the best games ever made, and obviously, that's the kind of thing that everybody needs to play. So, that was my list of 10 games that everybody needs to play at least once. What games would you put on a list like this? Please let me know in the comments, and if I've not played them, I will give them a look. But for now, that is all from me. If you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like, as I would greatly appreciate that. And if you want to see more videos from me, you could always subscribe. I upload every single week, not normally lists, but normally just videos focusing on one particular game. And I do it weekly, as I mentioned before. So, subscribe, please. I am asking you very nicely. But that is all for now. Have a nice day, and goodbye.